Hey, so in this video I'm just going to go through some examples of how to solve a quadratic trinomial equation. Now a trinomial equation means it's got three terms. So we'll look at solving some of them, but first of all let's just look at solving the second half of one of these questions. So this is one of the first questions from the PowerPoint we've been going through. This one now has already been factorized, which is normally the first step in solving a quadratic equation. So if it's already been factorized, what we do is we look at the two factors and separate them out. We're going to say x plus 2 is equal to 0, because that's our number on the right hand side. We're going to say that x minus 3 is equal to 0, because that's our number on the right hand side there as well. So now we've got two much easier equations to solve. For the one on the left, we're going to bring the 2 over. From the one on the right, we're going to bring the minus 3 over. So this, when the 2 comes over, it's going to become a minus 2 because it flips its sign. And when the minus 3 goes over to the other side, it flips to a positive 3. So we've got two answers then to this question. Basically, x can be equal to minus 2 or x can be equal to positive 3. Next question we're going to look at is very similar. 11x minus 1 times by 2x plus 3. So again, we're going to let each of those factors, because they are already factorized in this case, equal to 0. Our number on the right hand side, so 11x minus 1 is equal to 0. It's going to be one of our equations, and the other one is 2x plus 3 equals 0. Alright, on the left hand side, let's try and solve that. So we're going to get the x term by itself, bring the minus 1 over, and it becomes a plus 1. Then to solve from here, we want to get rid of the 11. So the left hand side cancels, we're just left with x is equal to 1 over 11. On the right hand side, keep the 2x on the left, bring the 3 over, and it becomes a minus 3. Then we want to get rid of the 2, so divide both sides by 2. And that leaves us with x, because the 2's cancel, is equal to minus 3 over 2. So again here we've got two solutions, which is pretty normal for a quadratic equation. Next we're going to get on to our first example of a quadratic trinomial. So there's two different methods of solving a quadratic trinomial. Let's first of all look at what a quadratic trinomial is. Quadratic means that the highest power of the letters is squared. So we've got x squared here, that's our highest power. We don't have any cubes or x's to the power of 4. And then trinomial means we've got three terms. So we've got 1, 2, 3 terms here. Now before Christmas, we already practiced factorizing quadratic trinomials. And one of the methods we used whenever there wasn't a number in front of the x squared. So what we did there was we just looked at the last term and factorized it as rough work. So here's our rough work over here. Let's factorize 28. So the numbers we get if we factorize 28 is 1 by 28. We can get 2 by 14. Or 4 by 7. And then we'll just look at adding each of those pairs together. So if we added 1 and 28, we get 29. If we added 2 and 14, we get 16. If we added 4 and 7, we get 11. So the one that we're most interested in is the final one. And the reason why is because when we add them, we get the middle number of our quadratic trinomial. So again, 4 and 7, we can multiply them to get 28, our last term, and we can add them to get 11, our middle term. So now all we have to do is set up two brackets. One of them is x plus 4, the other one is x plus 7. We'll let that equal to 0. Again, we get the 4 and 7 from here. We're not interested in these other two pairs because they don't add to give us the middle number. Okay, so now we factorize, so it's looking very similar to the two questions we looked at before. So we set up two smaller equations, x plus 4 is nothing, and x plus 7 is equal to 0 as well. And because they're separate, we just say the solution could be this or this. So then x is going to be equal to minus 4 in this equation, and x is going to be equal to minus 7 in this equation. So there are two answers. And remember, there is always two answers. Or usually two answers. Sometimes it can be the same answer twice for a quadratic equation. All right, so now we'll move on to the other method we can use for quadratic equations. We use this one. It's a little bit harder, so we don't use it when we don't have to. We use this one normally when there's a number in front of the x squared, because the old method won't work anymore. So what we do now is we multiply the first term by the last term. So 3 by 5 is 15 here. Then we factorize that, again looking for a factor pair that will add to give us the middle number. So we can have 15 by 1, or we can have 3 times by 5. Now again, let's look and see how they add up to give us, or what number they add up to give us. So 1 and 15 will give us 16 if we add them together. 3 and 5 will give us 8. So I think we're going to go with this one, because 3 and 5 we can multiply to give us 15, or add to give us the middle number. Now there's a few more steps involved this time. So what we're going to do is split up our 8x into a 3x plus a 5x. So 3x plus 5x does give us 8x. So we're not doing anything crazy here, right? We've just changed the way it's written. And then we're going to write our 3x squared here. And we're going to write our plus 5 at the end here. It's equal to 0. So 3x squared from here, 5 from here. And our 8x gets split up. Now what we do is we group these two terms together and factorize them. So if we look at what goes into 3x squared and 3x, well, 3x goes into both of them. 3x times by x will give us 3x squared. 3x times by 1 gives us 3x. If we look at what goes into 5x and 5, the answer is 5. 5 times by x gives us 5x. 5 times by 1 would give us our 5 here. Again, 3x times x gives us 3x squared. 3x times by 1 gives us 3x. 5 by x gives us 5x, and 5 by 1 gives us 5. Again, this is factorizing by grouping. We did it a bit before Christmas, so hopefully it's still in your head. Now both of these two brackets match, so we're happy enough to proceed. Means we've probably done it right. So we've got our x plus 1 there. Set that up in a bracket, and then our 3x and our 5 get put into their own bracket. 3x coming from here and 5 coming from here. I'll just underline them so you can see where each term came from. And now that's all equal to 0 still. At this stage you've factored it out, so all you do is you split it up, and you're going to have 3x plus 5 equals to 0. On the right hand side you're going to have x plus 1 is equal to 0. Now I'm going to solve the one on the right hand side because it's real quick. So x is equal to minus 1. The one on the left hand side, there's a few more steps, which should get x equal to minus 5 over 3 if you follow through with it. Again, I've skipped a few steps along here, but it's all stuff you should be able to do. Okay, so we're going to have a look at another one now. Now here you can see it's a quadratic trinomial because we have an x term, or an x squared term, we have an x term, and we have a normal term. Obviously this looks way more complicated because we've got fractions. So anytime we've got an equation with fractions in it, pretty good idea is to just try and get rid of the fractions, or cancel them out as soon as possible, and it'll make your life a lot easier. So the way we do that is we see, well, what number will have both 14 as a fraction and 7 as a fraction, or sorry, as a factor. So 14 divides into 14, and 7 also divides into 14. So we're going to use our lowest common multiple of the two numbers, which is 14. So we're going to multiply each term by 14. So it's going to be 14 by 3 over 14 x squared. It's going to be 14 times by 1 over 7 times by x. That's a minus there, so I have to be careful. And it's going to be 14 times by 1 over 14. And then the 0 also needs to be multiplied by 14. All right, so I'm going to put all these into brackets just to make it clear that I'm multiplying it. All right, so again, you can see here everything's being multiplied by 14. And I know that that's going to cancel with the 14 and it's going to cancel with the 7. So let's see how that goes. So 3 by 14 is 42. And keep that over 14. X squared. 14 by 1 is 14. Keep that over 7 times x. And 14 times 1 is 14, and we'll keep that over 14. On the right hand side, 14 multiplied by 0 is just 0. Okay, so now we're going to set about cancelling all these fractions, and we know because we multiplied every term by the right number, these fractions should divide and we'll not have a bottom of our fractions anymore. So 42 divided by 14 goes in evenly, and we're just left with 3x squared. 14 divided by 7 divides in evenly, we'll just be left with 2x. And 14 divided by 14 is 1. So everything's gone to plan. We've gotten rid of all our fractions here. All that's left to do now is try and solve this thing. So we'll set up our rough work again. The number in front of our x squared is not 1, unfortunately. We have a number there. So it's going to be the first number times by the last number. So 3 times by minus 1. And that's going to give us minus 3. And we'll factorize that out. So the factors are minus 3, or we could multiply a minus 3 by a plus 1, or we could multiply a minus 1 times by a plus 3. Now let's see how they'd work out if we added them. If we added these two, we get minus 2. If we added minus 1 plus 3, we get a positive 2. So we're going to go with the second option here, because it adds to give us our middle number. All right, now again, what we're going to do, copy out the 3x squared. We're going to split up our 2x. I'm going to split it up into a plus 3x minus 1x. We've got a minus 1 over here. Then we're going to group each of these two together. Those two together and those two together. And we'll see what goes into both. So our 3x squared plus 3x goes into both those. 3x times x gives us 3x squared. 3x times by 1 stays as 3x, right? 3x by x is x squared, 3x by 1 is 3x. Then what I'm going to do is look at what goes into minus x and minus 1. I know that I want my inside bracket to be positive, so I'm actually going to say I'm going to take out minus 1 from each. So minus 1 times x will give us minus x, and minus 1 times by positive 1 will give us minus 1. All right, again, the reason why I put the negative number on the outside here is because I want my two brackets to match. If I had a positive 1 outside, then I have minus x minus 1 inside, which doesn't match this bracket here. Okay, so my two brackets match. So I'm going to set them up in their own bracket here. And I'm going to set up my 3x minus 1 in its own bracket over there. So these come from those two places, and our second bracket comes from here. Okay, again, now we've factorized it, so let's just solve each of those smaller equations. 3x minus 1 is equal to nothing. X plus 1 is equal to 0 as well. So we've got this or this. 3x, bring the 1 over, comes plus 1. Then x, divide both sides by 3. We're left with 1 over 3. Here, if we bring the 1 over, it comes a minus 1. So there's our two possible answers.